Hello there, and thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman. Paris Schutz is live in Evanston. We'll get to him shortly. On the show tonight,
it's America's favorite rifle platform.
Hundreds of guns are banned in Illinois. Which ones made the list?
Northwestern is trying to give us a hamburger and paints it up as a steak.
Some Northwestern neighbors say they aren't happy with the new stadium proposal. How some say computer-generated art like this represents an existential threat to actual artists.
He could make you feel a certain way, yet not fully understand exactly where he's going or what he needs.
And Brandis, as you mentioned, I am in your neighborhood in Evanston tonight. Northwestern University officials are full steam ahead on the plan to tear down Ryan Field right behind me and replace it with a state-of-the-art new stadium. But some residents here say, whoa, not so fast. So we'll get both sides of the issue and tell you where the project goes from here, from a very snowy Evanston, Illinois. But first, we toss it back to you.
Thanks, Paris. We'll see you in a bit. And now to some of today's top stories. The father of the alleged Highland Park shooter pleaded not guilty today to charges that he recklessly aided his son in obtaining a firearm. 58-year-old Robert Cremo Jr. faces 7 counts of felony reckless conduct, 1 for each of the Highland Park victims. Cremo signed his son's application for a FOID card in December 2019 when the younger Cremo was only 19 years old and could not legally get a card without his father's signature. Lake County State's Attorney Eric Reinhardt calls that reckless because he knew his son had previously attempted suicide and threatened family members on separate occasions in 2019. A federal judge has denied R. Kelly's request for a new trial, despite his attorneys making the request multiple times. The 56-year-old R&B singer was convicted by a jury last year on charges that he sexually abused his then 14-year-old goddaughter and other minors in the late 90s and early 2000s. R. Kelly's attorneys have argued that his goddaughter lied in her testimony in that trial, but in a 10-page order, Judge Harry Leinenweber disagreed. Kelly is scheduled to be sentenced in this case next week. He's already been sentenced to 30 years in prison after a federal trial in New York convicted him of sex trafficking and racketeering. And people who are returning to their communities after release from prison may find additional support now coming from the city of Chicago.
What this new policy says is that there is a population of untapped potential. They are qualified with a conviction. And we as a city should make sure that they are afforded opportunities to move forward with their lives just like any other resident of the city.
The policy Willette Benford there is referring to is the city's background check policy, which prohibits the city from considering certain parts of a person's criminal background during the hiring process, such as a conviction more than 5 years old or an arrest that did not lead to a conviction. City is now also taking proposals for a $6.6 million program to support returning residents with employment services, paid work-based learning opportunities, and a 12-month rent subsidy. Coming up in the program, Evanston community members respond to Northwestern's stadium proposal. Paris Schutz with that story right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
Some residents of Evanston are planning to try and put a halt to Northwestern's big plans to rebuild century-old Ryan Field. The university says the new stadium will be more accessible for people with disabilities, offer green spaces, and, to some community members' dismay, have the option for concerts and other events. Paris Schutz and producer Blair Paddock have been reporting in Evanston this week as a part of our In Your Neighborhood series. Paris joins us now from a snowy Evanston. Paris.
Snow everywhere across Chicago, Brandis. Yeah, a coalition of community groups is planning to get together this Sunday to air their concerns about this new plan. And if you walk across the streets of Evanston, when you can see them, you know, when it's not snowing, you won't find a more polarizing issue. There are signs in people's yards pro and against this mega plan to tear down the old stadium behind me and replace it with a brand new one. Some thrilled at the potential, others not so much.
Periel Davis lives less than 2 blocks away from Ryan Field, but she says she's leaving town if the new stadium becomes reality.
If they do have the stadium and they start using it for concerts, I plan to move. It's not what I signed up for.
The school got a $480 million gift from the Ryan family, a big chunk of that for the redevelopment of the football stadium. Dave Davis is Northwestern's Senior Executive Director for the Office of Neighborhood and Community Relations. He says the current stadium was built in the early 1900s and is sorely in need of the revamp.
So there's a number of structural deficiencies that's wrong with the stadium, and we just need to bring this into the 21st century.
The university says the proposal features more accessibility, public green space, and 12,000 fewer seats to reduce congestion. But the redesign isn't the issue for many residents. It's the added activity they believe it'll bring to the neighborhood. This is because the university applied to change zoning to allow for indoor and outdoor lectures, speakers, music festivals, and other social events for up to 10,000 people. To Periel Davis, who volunteers with the Most Livable City Association, that means more foot traffic and a more unpredictable crowd than the usual Northwestern fans.
Northwestern is trying to give us a hamburger and paints it up as a steak.
Garrett Karp is the executive director of the Evanston Chamber of Commerce. He sees the added events as a good deal for Evanston businesses who rely on the handful of Wildcat home games.
Businesses are really excited about the potential for seeing new traffic, seeing new audiences, but also the partnership opportunities throughout the year.
Adjacent to the field is the fan favorite Mustard's Last Stand, serving hot dogs and more since the 1960s. Manager Samuel Lycia says the project will be a boon for sales of items like the famous Wildcat Burger, a half-pound of ground beef with cheddar cheese, grilled onions, barbecue sauce, and jardinera peppers.
Normally everybody always comes looking for mustards on every game, every event that Northwestern has next door, so it'll make our business secure.
The school produced an economic impact study that concludes the new stadium will generate over $1 billion in Cook and Lake counties combined. Neva Legale is a senior at Northwestern with the group Students Organizing for Labor Rights. She's asking for an independent economic impact study. Her group is also hoping the university hires a diverse workforce for construction and for union neutrality.
Northwestern has an immense amount of funds and resources, and it's time for it to do the right thing with those resources and repay back the community that's given it so much by letting it be here tax-free.
Dave Davis says the school is still open to hearing community concerns and has already made changes to the plan, like decreasing the numbers of seats and an underground loading dock to lessen traffic.
It's also important for us to just note that this level of investment, this magnitude of investment, requires us to design a facility that will be both environmentally and financially sustainable. And we know we can't do that with 7 football games per year.
And Brandis, that coalition of community groups plans to meet at 3 p.m. at the Fleetwood Jourdain Center here in Evanston to air out some of their concerns. Before we go, we should update on another story, that tree that fell on Northwestern's main campus off of Sheridan. 4 people were injured, 3 were treated for serious injuries at the hospital. We have full details on that on our website, WTTW.com, as well as full details on this story about the rebuilding of Ryan Field. And now we toss it back to you in that warm studio.
Of course, Paris, find someplace warm yourself. Thank you. Guns classified by the state of Illinois as assault weapons have been banned since January 11th, meaning that hundreds, perhaps thousands of guns can no longer be legally sold in Illinois. Those who already own guns and ammunition covered by the ban can keep them, but they must register with the state. Amanda Vinicky explains the difference, though, between guns covered by the law and those that are still legal.
It was a sunny summer morning, perfect for the post-COVID return of Highland Park's 4th of July parade, until 10:14 a.m.
Literally out of the clear blue sky, I heard what sounded like I would describe as many firecrackers going off.
It wasn't firecrackers, it was hailing bullets. Months later, Lauren Bennett testified before Illinois lawmakers about how it felt as she was shot in her hip and upper back, how she feared for her life and that of her young sons.
Imagine a hot metal dart-like projectile tearing through your body at supersonic speed, and likely you'll grab whatever part of your body was hit because you know something's not right, only to feel that excessive amounts of blood draining out of you and soaking everything.
Sales of the type of AR-15 style gun used in the 4th of July attack, which left 7 dead, are now banned in Illinois, as are nearly 200 other guns classified by a new state law as assault weapons.
Illinois now officially prohibits the sale and distribution of these mass killing machines.
Except many gun owners and sellers say the banned guns are not military-grade weapons of war. Dan Eldridge is president of the Federal Firearms Licensees of Illinois. The gun dealers group is suing in federal court to strike down the law. Eldridge owns Maxson Shooter Supplies and Indoor Gun Range in Des Plaines and had to pull 15 to 20% of his inventory off the shelves as soon as Governor Pritzker signed the law in early January, like AR-15 style rifles.
It's America's favorite rifle platform, and it is that because it is highly adaptable to all shapes and sizes of people, easily accessorized. It's built on a standard, available at a wide variety of price points and features. It really is a modern sporting rifle.
You just described an AR-15 as a modern sporting rifle. Advocates of this ban say no, that's an assault weapon.
The term itself, assault weapon, is a made-up term by the gun control people in the late 80s when they were trying to conflate semi-automatic rifles with machine guns. It's a made-up term that has absolutely no meaning.
Eldridge says AR pattern guns are popular, ubiquitous, with an estimated 1 to 2 million legally owned by Illinois residents. As the lawsuit put it, if the right to keep and bear arms means anything, it means that the government cannot ban the most popular firearms in the country. An argument Eldridge says is backed by U.S. Supreme Court precedent, but which Cook County Sheriff Tom Dart says makes no common sense, considering AK and AR style guns are popular with the wrong crowd, who he calls the bad guys.
Behind me right now is just some of the weapons we've gotten recently. This was not always the case. So like 16 years ago when I started, this was not normal. We wouldn't get these type of weapons with this type of lethality.
He says now it's the norm. Dart's team gave us a demonstration of an AR semi-automatic rifle, so-called because rounds automatically reload, but the trigger must be manually pulled each time to fire a bullet. AK-style long guns, also now banned, are similar. In this demo, the shooter manually pulls the trigger as fast as he safely can. Compare that with the speed a Glock fires when outfitted with what's called a switch. It's like a light switch. With a quick flick of the switch, a semi-automatic gun becomes automatic. The gun fires as long as the trigger is pulled. Switches were already federally illegal, but they're now also covered under the new state statute. The popular Glock-style handgun is still legal under Illinois' new law. What isn't, however, are magazines that hold anything over 15 rounds, like this, which has the capacity to fire 30 bullets. Eldridge isn't fighting about the switch ban, though he says the state provision is superfluous. Automatic or machine guns were already against the law in Illinois. But Eldridge says lawmakers overstepped with the new law. I asked him, just because these guns and features are popular, if they're used in mass murders, is it reasonable to use the law to prevent their proliferation?
People who make that argument are, again, conflating lawful use and unlawful use. It's unlawful to murder people, whether you do it with a steak knife or a rifle or a handgun.
Yeah, will the bad guys still be able to get their hands on it? Probably, but instead of getting it in 2 days, maybe now it'll take 2 weeks. And maybe now instead of going for $300, $400 in the street, it's $1,000 because they're harder to find.
Dart says the law's drafters were meticulous, surgical, with what guns and features they included. It's a moving target. The law allows state police to add more guns to keep up with technology and manufacturing.
You try to explain to me how when we pull someone over, and last night we found a car with 3 of these in them, when they have an extended magazine, you're trying to tell me that's for personal protection? Come on, let's be real here. I mean, let's stop playing the games.
Dart says he wishes the law went further by including more severe punishments for those who carry extended magazines that he says are clearly meant for the battlefield, not for self-defense. For Chicago Tonight, I'm Amanda Vinicky.
Illinois' law doesn't just outlaw types of guns and limit magazine size. It also bans a slew of gun features, including pistol grips, threaded barrels, and telescoping stocks. Eldridge says most of these features actually make guns safer because it makes them easier to use, hold, and control. That's also part of the firearms dealer's lawsuit. Back with more right after this. Powerful AI models capable of convincingly copying the style of virtually any artist to produce original images have swept the internet. For example, here are some magic avatars that I generated with some selfies using the app Lensa. But artists whose work can now be easily mimicked say these AI-generated images represent an existential threat. Now, a team at the University of Chicago is helping artists to fight back and protect their work. Joining us to tell us more is Ben Zhao, professor of computer science at the University of Chicago, where his research interests include social networks and the security and privacy issues that come with them. Ben, welcome back. Thanks for joining us.
Hello.
So why have these kinds of AI models become such an existential threat for actual human artists?
Yeah, it's amazing. These AI models have really grown tremendously in just a matter of months. And they are able now to not only generate original sort of illustrations and concept art, but also now to be able to mimic any specific artist, given just a few samples of their work. So you can feed the model some samples from any particular artist that you enjoy, and after training a little bit more, that model will be then to be able to simulate and produce original pieces of art of whatever subject matter you like, you know, mimicking the style of that particular artist that it's just been trained on. And so, yeah, it's a big deal because a lot of these artists have trained and, you know, worked decades to be where they are, to develop that personal style. All of a sudden, to see that particular style be replicated in a matter of seconds by an AI model without, you know, credit, without payment or compensation.
At what point did you come to realize that this was becoming such a problem that it prompted you and your team to come up with a solution, at least for now?
It's very interesting. A couple of years ago, we had done some work defending individuals from invasive machine learning facial recognition models. And so last summer, we had started getting a couple of emails on a mailing list we set up for users. And a couple of them were asking us about or whether we could, you know, use our tool on art for artists. And we were actually quite confused at the moment. And then it took us, I think, a couple months for the news to hit about DALL-E and some of these other models before we realized what this was about. And so we went back to them and started talking to the artists, got involved in some of the town halls, and really heard firsthand the level of impact that they were, that these models were having on their lives. And that's when we decided we needed to act.
So let's illustrate the threat to artists. We wanted to show the work of Carla Ortiz, who has worked with you on this. And so we're going to show the first set of images we're going to show. These are Ortiz's original work. So we're getting a look at that right now, art by Carla Ortiz. So these next three images that we're going to show, they were created by an AI model that is trying to mimic Ortiz's style from unprotected images. And viewers can kind of see the similarities and differences there. Okay, so now this next set of images, these are AI attempts to copy Ortiz, but this time her work has been protected by your Glaze app, Ben. And the end product, well, it ends up looking like bad Van Gogh. Ben, without getting too technical on us, how does the Glaze app help protect artists' work? It does something with changing the way your app is, it's not discernible to the human eye. How does that confuse the AI models?
Right. There is this fundamental discrepancy between how machine learning views images and how we humans view images. And so that's what we're exploiting, this big gap. And basically machine learning, if you can think of it, they see it in a different dimension than how we see it. So think of it like either ultraviolet or ultrasonic. There's certain signals that we don't pick up because of the limitations of our senses. Machine learning models see a completely different side to these images. And so what we do is we decipher that. We've basically, based on the models that we're able to get access to, we understand what their views of style is. And then we work with that in order to basically manipulate and push these pieces of art along that dimension significantly so that it really distorts what the model thinks it sees as a style, But in real world terms, in visual terms for us, it changes actually very little.
So, Ben, your app is providing a technological fix, but we're also seeing some lawsuits are targeting the companies creating these AI models. Prisma Labs, which is the one that, of course, created the popular Lensa app that we demonstrated with earlier, was sued this week by Illinois for violating the state's Biometric Information and Privacy Act. Do you think that ultimately it's going to be legislation that is going to be needed as the permanent fix to rein in these companies?
I think it has to be. I think it really has to be. Some of these technological solutions like our app, it helps. It's really meant to raise the bar for mimicry so that attackers or home users cannot just click a couple buttons and basically replace a particular artist who's been training for decades.
Of course, if there's anything we all know, it is that technology will continue to evolve. But that's why we've got Ben Zhao, University of Chicago. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Up next, a jazzy tribute to a musical icon. Stay with us. One of the most influential musicians of the 20th century is being honored in a new tribute album with a jazzy twist. Arts correspondent Angel Ito introduces us to the Bowie Project.
Changing trees, this little town, you let me down.
A vocalist and a woodwinds player are combining their skills in a harmonic fusion with songs by David Bowie that feature jazzy additions.
There's a responsibility. They're a gigantic icon of the 20th century. These are the more popular songs. They're part of the fabric of the last 50, 60 years.
Jim Galarretto with the Metropolitan Jazz Octet arranged some of the songs on their new album. Now he says their lyrical interpretation of Bowie's music informed their musical adjustments.
Very few of his songs are right on the nose. You can't say this means that. It's largely open for interpretation.
Once we picked a song we knew we wanted to approach, the idea is to not copy Bowie, but also not totally ignore what he did. We wound up tapping into, I think, 4 other musician arrangers to do treatments. And a treatment of a song is, so you take a David Bowie song and maybe the person who's doing the treatment might change the feel, maybe change the tempo.
Oddity was one of them that you did a brilliant arrangement on, and it was like, do we really want to go there? Because it's pop culture.
Those updated treatments, alongside vocalist Paul Marinaro's jazz undertones, create what they're describing as a new concept album titled The Bowie Project.
It's not just an album of David Bowie. There are many underlying themes that are cohesive throughout the album. So it plays like an old-fashioned concept album. We didn't have any requisites of, let's pick, 50% hits, 50%. It was just material that we felt spoke to us and had some sense of cohesion as an album. Whatever camp they're in, if they've never heard a David Bowie song, I think they can find a way into these stories because he was brilliant at writing for all of us.
Our website for more information on where to find the Bowie Project, and be on the lookout for how you can live stream their next live concert in April. And that's our show for this Thursday night. Don't forget to stay connected with us by signing up for our daily briefing. And please join us tomorrow night at 7 for the Week in Review and at 10 for Chicago Tonight. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thanks for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a proud sponsor of diversity, equity, and inclusion-focused free continuing legal education for lawyers throughout the region.
Hi, I'm Alan Cumming, your host for the annual awards ceremony that honors movies and television made by grown-ups for grown-ups that speak to grown-up minds. Join me and Career Achievement winner Jamie Lee Curtis.
The only thing I got going for me in this whole big wide world is this body, this face, and what I got up here. I like being the best.
For the Movies for Grown-Ups Awards with AARP, the magazine on great performances.
Friday at 8 on WTTW.
What do you want, Nelson? One guess. The victim is Susie Colebrook. I'm afraid she's been murdered.
Give me what you got.
All right, then. So, we have a bullet wound to the heart.
More holes in this coroner's report than Swiss cheese.
Murder cover-up at Briar Lane? Someone wanted this woman dead. We need to find out why.